Every evening, like clockwork, he'd be there, on his front porch, just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. And every evening, he'd play the same song. Hust one song, Ober and Ober. I'd hear it from my window, a gentle, melancholic melody. It seemed to drift through the neighborhood, like a lonely ghost. 4 months. This was our silent routine. I'd be in my kitchen, making dinner, and his music would be the soundtrack to my evening. At first, I was curious. Who was this guy? And why just that one song? It was a beautiful tune, don't get me wrong, but the repetition was odd. I'd catch glimpses of Hema silhouette against the setting sun, hunched over his acoustic guitar. He never seemed to notice anyone. He was just in his own world, lost in those 6 strings. My neighbors had theories. Mrs. Gable from 2 doors down swore he was heartbroken, playing a song for a lost love. Young Tim, the teenager across the street, thought he was just practicing, trying to get that one song absolutely perfect for some big audition. I never asked. It felt too personal, like I'd be intruding on a private ritual. So I just listened from afar, letting the music become a familiar, comforting part of my day. The melody became ingrained in my mind. I could hum it perfectly. I knew every pause, every subtle change in tempo. Sometimes, when he played, it sounded hopeful, like a promise. Other times, it was filled with such a deep sadness. It almost made my own heart ache. It was as if the song itself was a living thing, and its mood changed with the man playing it. Then, one evening, something was different. The air was particularly still, and the heat of the day was finally giving way to a cool breeze. I'd had a rough day at work, one of those days where everything feels heavy and complicated. I got home, dropped my keys on the counter, and heard it, the familiar opening notes of his song. But tonight, it didn't just feel like background music. It felt like an invitation. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the tough day. Maybe it was months of pent-up curiosity. But instead of starting dinner, I walked out my front door, crossed the small patch of lawn that separated our houses, and quietly sat on the top step of his porch, a few feet away from him. He didn't stop playing. He didn't even look up at first. He just continued, his fingers moving gracefully over the fretboard. The sound was so different up close. It was richer, more complex. I could hear the soft squeak of his fingers sliding on the strings, the deep resonance of the wood, the quiet rhythm of his breathing. It wasn't just a melody anymore. It was a story. I sat there, completely silent, and just listened. He played the song through once, then twice. The world outside of this porch seemed to fade away. There were no deadlines, no emails, no worries. There was only the music, the warm twilight, and the shared silence between 2 strangers. When the last note finally faded into the air, he slowly lowered his hands from the guitar. The silence that followed was profound. For the first time, he turned and looked at me. He had kind eyes, a little tired, but kind. He offered a small, hesitant smile. "Evening," he said, his voice soft, a little raspy. "Evening," I replied, my own voice barely a whisper. "That's a beautiful song." He looked down at his guitar, running a thumb over the strings without making a sound. "Thanks. It was my wife's favorite." The past tense hung in the air between us. Suddenly, all of Mrs. Gable's theories clicked into place, but the reality felt so much more real and raw. She loved to listen to me play it out here," he continued, his gaze distant. "She passed away last year, playing it. It feels like she's still here, listening with me, like she's sitting right where you are." My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't just intruded on a ritual. I had stepped into a memory. I felt a sudden urge to apologize, to leave, to give him back his private space. But then he looked at me again, and his smile was a little less hesitant this time. "It's the first time someone sat with me since she's been gone," he said quietly. "Thank you. It's nice to not be alone with it." And in that moment, I understood. The song wasn't about practice or auditions. It wasn't just for a lost love. It was a conversation with her, a way to keep her memory alive, to spend a few moments with her every single day. By playing the same song, he was holding on to the best parts of his past, not out of sadness, but out of love. I didn't say much after that. I didn't need to. We sat in comfortable silence as the last light of day disappeared and the first stars began to prick the dark sky. He told me her name was Eleanor and that she loved gardening. He pointed to the slightly overgrown rose bushes near the porch and said they were hers. I went back to my house that night with a different kind of feeling. The melody was still in my head, but it wasn't melancholic anymore. It was filled with love, with memory, and with a quiet strength. The next evening, he was there again. And so was I. I brought over 2 glasses of iced tea, set one down beside him, and took my seat on the top step. He nodded a thank you, and then he began to play. The Sammy sung the same beautiful, heartbreaking, and ultimately hopeful melody. But this time it felt different. It wasn't a solo performance anymore. It was a shared moment, a new routine. Sometimes, stories aren't found in grand adventures or dramatic events. Sometimes, they're hidden in the simple, repeated actions of the people around us. They're in the quiet rituals that help us heal, remember, and connect. All we have to do is stop, be quiet for a moment, and truly listen. You never know what beautiful stories you might hear. Thanks for watching. If this story touched you, consider subscribing for more. See you next time.